open up the Town of Wilmington Board of Appeals meeting for May 13th, 2020. It's now exactly 7 o'clock. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law under Mass General Law 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, members of the public who wish to watch and listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner: WCTV, Channel 9, Comcast Xfinity, Channel 37 on Verizon Fios, and live stream at WCTV.org. This meeting of the Wilmington Board of Appeals is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Members of the public would like to listen to this meeting while in progress, and also do so via telephone by dialing 1-646-558-8656 and enter meeting ID number 853-6424-2125 and press pound, and then press pound again at the next voice prompt. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment by following the steps previously noted, and then press *9 on their telephone keypad. This will notify the meeting host that the caller wishes to speak. All callers using this feature will be placed in a queue in the order that they entered the prompt. In the event that, despite our best efforts, we are not able to provide for real-time access, we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as we are able. The first case on the docket is case number 120 and 1020, BIV 613 Main Street LLC, map 29, parcel 11S, location at 613 Main Street, to acquire a special permit in case 120 under 6.6.7.7 for the Groundwater Protection District, and case 1020 to acquire a special permit under section 6.1 subsection 6.1.3, change or extend a non-conforming structure. Now, I believe this matter, at least in part, has been continued from a previous meeting. Do we have someone representing the applicant here?
Yes, good evening. My name is Brian McCarthy. I'm with R.J. O'Connell & Associates. We're the civil engineer for the project. Online with me this evening is Ryan Patton of Wheelock Street Capital and Greg Hughes with Seon Group, the property owners, and also our project attorney, Sarah Turano Flores from Nutter. Okay.
Do you want to just let us know the two things that you're here for and what you're seeking? And I believe a portion of this meeting had been continued, correct?
That is correct. We originally had filed the the first application for the special permit for the increase in impervious area was filed the end of last year, and we had continued that for several meetings. And then we more recently had submitted the application for the changes or extension to the pre-existing non-conforming use of the driveway and frontage, which was that was a more recent application. But we wanted to have both applications heard at the same time. So
sure, go ahead. Why don't you let us know what you're seeking?
So what I'd like to do, obviously, the first permit, as was mentioned, is for the increase in impervious area in the groundwater protection district, and the second one is for a change or extension to the pre-existing non-conforming use of the frontage and driveway. What I'd like to do, if you please, is that I would like to do an overview of the project site, existing condition, and then discuss the proposed project. I can keep it pretty brief and quick.
Sure, go ahead.
So I think, Kelly, you have a PDF of my presentation plan. Can you share those?
Yep. Hold on. My assistant's helping me.
Okay.
Where's my- yeah. All that. this. You just want to go back between whatever he has it with. Between the tabs. Okay, Brian.
So Kelly, do you have the colored presentation plans I emailed you? Or if it's easier, you can let me share my screen and I can pull them up.
Actually, yeah, because mine wouldn't be the color ones once. Yeah, I don't have a color scanner. So if you could share yours, that would be great.
Okay, so it says to me that somebody else is sharing the screen. So can you allow me to share?
Okay, we just stopped.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, can everybody see this plan?
Yep.
Okay, so just going through this pretty quickly here. This is
Oh, yeah.
we're going to start here. So this is a site plan of the existing conditions. It shows the entire property of 613 Main Street. And it shows Main Street is up in this area where my hand is showing right now. The site itself is located in the light industrial district and the groundwater protection overlay district. It's located on the south side of Main Street, behind the businesses that front on Main Street. It's on the south side of the MBTA railroad tracks, which is in this area right here. The site itself does not have frontage on Main Street. The site frontage is on Butters Row, which is on the right-hand side of the screen here. But access to the site is from Main Street through access easements that are on the abutting property, and also across the MBTA railroad right-of-way. The access to the property is on 611. The access easement is on 611 Main Street. There is no access onto Butters Row, as the land between the developed portion of the site and Butters Row is all wetland area. And in addition, Butters Row, as you may know, is a narrow residential street with a very narrow bridge. The site itself is approximately 39.5 acres. It's got 20 acres of upland area and 19.5 acres of wetlands. To the north and east is commercial development in this area and the MBTA railroad tracks. To the south is Butters Row and residential properties in this southern area here. And to the west is undeveloped land and residential beyond that area. This plan here is a bit of a blow up of that existing conditions. The existing development on the site consists of a large warehouse distribution facility, which is about 411,733 square feet. The existing facility includes 23 loading docks and 25 trailer parking spaces on the southeast side in this area here. Existing parking in the southern area here and along the front of the building consists of 281 spaces, which is actually less than required by the zoning. Wetland areas wrap around the whole development. That's in this darker green area here. So the whole developed area is pretty much wrapped with wetlands. There's some upland area in the lighter green. This is upland area here and upland area on the north side of the building. The site itself is relatively flat. The finished floor elevation, the floor elevation of the building is at elevation 93, and the elevation of the wetlands that are all around this is at 86. The original development was constructed in 1983. The wetland area located in the south end of the site here was the original stormwater detention basin. And so stormwater runoff from the existing condition from this whole roof area discharges into this wetland detention basin here. And also the stormwater runoff from the existing paved areas where the loading and trailer parking is here, and also this parking lot here, all discharges into that existing wetland detention basin. The stormwater runoff from the loading docks in this area, it has really no treatment before it discharges into the wetlands. In the mid-1990s, there was parking expansions, which was the parking area in front of the building here was constructed in the mid-1990s, and this area down here was constructed in the mid-1990s. Drainage from this north parking lot, or from this front parking lot, actually discharges to the north, to the wetland area to the north. It does have an existing subsurface infiltration basin in treating the water in that area. The drainage from the southern parking lot is piped through an oil grit separator tank in this area here before it discharges to the existing wetlands. So that's kind of an overview of the existing condition. This plan here shows you the proposed project. The use of the property will remain the same as a warehouse distribution facility. We anticipate that there could be up to 3 tenants in the building based on current tenant interest. The project will involve demolishing in this area here approximately 27,340 square feet of the existing building to construct 21 additional loading dock spaces in this area. We will lose, in this area, we'll lose 65 parking spaces to allow for truck loading and maneuvering at the new loading docks. The project will involve construction of new parking spaces on the north side of the building. And will also construct additional parking spaces in this southern parking lot area. The total parking provided in the new project here is 330 spaces, which is an addition of 49 additional parking spaces. The parking required by the zoning bylaw for this project, for this development here, is 505 spaces. So even with the 27,000 square foot reduction in the building, we are still 175 spaces less than required by zoning. So we applied for, and the planning board approved a special permit for relief from the parking requirements. So we did not have to construct those additional spaces. The existing loading in the southern area here and trailer parking over here all remains the same. The existing access drive through the easement on the abutting property out to Main Street, that access drive remains the same. Landscaping will be provided in the new parking areas in accordance with the zoning requirements. The parking expansion areas in the southern area and also in the north here will be in the buffer zone of the wetlands. So we submitted a notice of intent to the Conservation Commission, and the Conservation Commission approved the project with an order of conditions. With regard to impervious area, the existing impervious area on the site is 13.56 acres, which is 34.3% of the site. The zoning bylaw requires groundwater recharge for impervious area that exceeds 15% of the lot area. So 15% of the lot area is 5.92 acres. So this just the existing impervious area alone exceeds that 15% by 7.64 acres. The proposed addition to the impervious area for the expanded parking is 0.85 acres. So adding that in, the total proposed impervious cover will be 14.41 acres, which will be 36.5% of the total lot area. This next plan I'm calling up here is the drainage plan. So as required by the zoning bylaw, the proposed project will include groundwater recharge. And in fact, the proposed project will bring the existing condition into compliance with the zoning bylaw by constructing large groundwater recharge systems to capture runoff from the existing impervious area in addition to the new impervious area. In order to bring the existing condition into compliance, runoff from 3.5 acres of the existing roof in this northern area here, 3.5 acres of this roof will be redirected into a large subsurface infiltration system located on the north side of the building here. Runoff from the new parking area on the north side in the same area will be directed into another subsurface infiltration basin under that parking lot. The runoff from this from the entire southern parking area will be directed into a surface vegetated infiltration basin located here. The existing subsurface infiltration system in the front of the building here will be improved and maintained as part of the project. So all of these infiltration basins provide the required stormwater volume, stormwater storage volume for groundwater recharge to meet the zoning bylaw. This proposed stormwater management system is designed to comply with the Mass DEP stormwater management policy and the town of Wilmington stormwater regulations for water quality treatment and peak flow mitigation. The system will include standards like the catch basins with deep sumps and hooded outlets, water quality treatment units, which are hydrodynamic particle separators, oil grit separators for runoff from the loading docks, sediment for bays in the basins, in the surface basins, a water quality swale in this area right here, and the surface detention basin and infiltration basin, as I mentioned earlier, and the subsurface basins and infiltration basins in this area. So the water quality treatment from the existing paved areas will be significantly improved with the new treatment devices. Runoff from all of the existing loading and trailer parking areas will now be treated where it wasn't in the existing condition. And the peak rates of stormwater runoff will be mitigated so that the peak rates are not increased in the post-development condition. So that's kind of an overview of the project. What I'd like to do now is just describe the pre-existing non-conforming frontage and driveway access. So 613 Main Street, the subject property, was created by a site plan dated July 31st, 1981. The lot created had a 367.24 foot frontage on Butters Row. The bylaw in effect at that time, with the amendments through 1977, required 100 feet of frontage. At some point after the lot was created, the bylaw was amended to include a definition of frontage, which required that it be on a street providing a 50-foot wide right-of-way. Butters Row does not possess 50 feet in width. It's more like 35 feet of a right-of-way. So the frontage for the lot of Butters Row is currently pre-existing non-conforming. The current driveway easement serving as the sole access to 613 Main Street was created by Plan and Deed dated December of 1981. At the time the easement was created, the area of Wilmington that included both the easement and 613 Main Street was zoned as industrial. Warehouse and distribution facilities uses were allowed as a right in the industrial district at the time the easement was created. And the previous owner of this property, Sweetheart Plastics, started using the driveway for that use in December of 1981. At some point after December 1981, the area was rezoned and the land containing the driveway through the abutting property was zoned as general business. And the 613 Main Street property was zoned as light industrial. So warehouse distribution uses are still permitted as a right in the light industrial district, but not in the general business district. So after the planning board issued the special permit for parking for this project, the abutters on either side of the easement appealed to the land court. The complaint alleged, in addition to the zoning appeal, that a special permit from the ZBA was needed to alter or extend the pre-existing non-conforming use of the frontage and the access driveway. Our position in the litigation is that we weren't changing or extending the use of the frontage or driveway. The use will remain the same, distribution and warehouse. However, in order to eliminate the confusion caused by the abutters' claims, and because we are seeking a special permit from the ZBA for the impervious coverage, we added the special permit to alter or change the pre-existing non-conforming use of the frontage and the driveway access. That lawsuit has since been settled, and a dismissal is expected to be filed in the near future. but we're just following through with this special permit application as a housekeeping matter. So in closing, I guess I would want to note that the application meets the special permit standards. The use is allowed by right in the underlying light industrial district and will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing use. The use is in keeping with the general purpose of the intent of the Wilmington zoning bylaw, because it is no different than the use that has existed for 40 years at the site. And while the new loading docks are being added, our extensive review traffic reports submitted to the planning board confirm that it will result in only a slight increase in traffic. In addition, we are contributing a fair share traffic mitigation payment of $25,000. The special permit for parking relief will allow the impervious area to be kept to a minimum, as we do not have to construct the additional parking required by zoning. And the stormwater management will improve the water quality treatment on the site and will improve and will provide for a significant amount of groundwater recharge for both the existing developed area and the new developed area and the new impervious area. And it will bring it into compliance with the current zoning bylaw. So for those reasons, we're saying that the project complies with the special permit standards. So that concludes my presentation.
Before I go to the other members for comment and then open up a public hearing, Kelly, do we have a recommendation from the town engineer on the groundwater issue?
We do.
And
So
what was that?
he does, they recommend granting the special permit as requested. As the engineering division has reviewed the documentation referenced above, finds that the proposed recharge system demonstrate compliance.
Okay, and what about planning? Do they have a recommendation on this?
They do. They also recommend approval. Groundwater recharge is proposed to mitigate the impervious area. The project recently received site plan review, stormwater management permit, and parking relief special permit. Everything, all decisions were approved.
Did they have a comment on the special permit or just on the groundwater?
That is just on the groundwater, as when we got the special permit to extend the non-conforming, the planning and engineering hasn't had any review process since then due to the COVID. Their next review isn't for another couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need it to move forward, but it's something we ordinarily get, but it's not necessary. Okay, then what I'll do first is I'll open it to the board members. If anybody has any questions of the applicant or any comments on the project before I open up a public hearing. Anybody? No question? Okay. All right, well, if nobody has any questions or comments on the application or to the applicant, I'll now open up the public hearing. Mr. O'Neill, is there anyone in queue wishing to comment on this?
There isn't currently. Any callers can hit *9 on their keypad to indicate they wish to speak.
Okay, why don't we hold off for a moment and let anybody who wants to do that do so. Nobody yet?
No, sir.
Okay, seeing that there has been no comment, no public comment that has chimed in, then I'll close the public hearing. I'll bring it back to the board for any further comment, discussion, or anyone who cares to make a motion.
I do have one question. During the site plan review, was there any requests or discussion about improving or doing anything to the right of way in the access into that site? Did the planning board bring any of that stuff up?
So they didn't bring it up, if I recall correctly, but they did suggest that we meet and discuss it with the owner, with the other property owners that across which that easement is located. And as part of the settlement agreement, we have discussed that driveway and putting some additional traffic control striping on the driveway.
Well, that's kind of my comment, is that it is a highly used right of way. It's almost like a roadway. You've just added 21 loading docks. So I would assume that the vehicular access and semis that are using that access road, that volume will increase on that road. It's a bit dangerous, and I'm surprised that they didn't recommend something or ask for something.
So what we are doing on that, and the planning board approved plans do include additional striping on the driveway, in the terms of putting in a striped center line, stop controls, stop signage, that type of controls that are missing from out there right now. And we will be improving the surface of that driveway to improve. Right now, it's kind of beaten up and broken, and pavement's not in good condition, but we will be improving that before we finish the project and stripe it and put in the proper traffic control devices.
Can I ask a question? So you said about the improvement, is it just a one-time deal that you're going to improve it, or like who's going to maintain it in the future?
So the owners of the 613 Main property, this property that we're talking about, will be maintaining the access driveway in the future, and so in perpetuity. So
Okay.
Is that part of the conditions from the planning board?
that is part of the easement agreement with the abutters and the settlement with them.
I don't have anything else.
Anybody else want to comment? Anyone care to make a motion?
Yeah, what settlement were you referring to with the neighbors? What's that all about?
Sorry, the settlement, in order to, so the abutters had filed an appeal to our special permit for the parking relief. And we met with them to resolve that appeal and come up with a settlement for that appeal.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion for case 1-20, and I'll, Chairman, should I just put them together, or should we do them separately?
I think we probably should take them separately. So maybe you take the first one, 120 is with regard to the groundwater, 1020 is with regard to the non-conforming extension. So I would probably say we should take one and then the other.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve case 1-20 to acquire a special permit for 6.6.7.7 for the groundwater protection district for the case of BIV-613 Main Street LLC.
We have a second on that?
I'll second it.
We have a second on them. All those in favor? I'm going to have to go through a roll call. Ms. Santini,
Aye.
Mr. Lepore. Can't hear you, Ray. Your sound's not on. Yeah, still can't hear you. I would say put your right hand up if you say aye. All right. Jonathan, I assume that passes constitutional muster. All right, Mr. Barletta,
Aye.
Mr. Siracusa,
All right.
and then I'm also an aye, so that's unanimous on the first case.
And then I'll make a motion for case 10-20 to acquire a special permit, statute 6.1, subsection 6.1.3, change or extend a non-conforming structure.
It being no more detrimental to the neighborhood, I assume.
Exactly.
Okay. We have that motion. Do we have a second on that?
I'll
Second,
second it.
Okay, I heard Mr. Syracuse's voice first, so I'll put him in. Ms. Santini,
Yes.
Mr. Lepore? There he is, aye. Mr. Barletta,
yes.
Mr. Syracusa,
Aye.
and then myself, aye, so that's unanimous.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
this is Sarah Toronto Flores, the attorney for the applicant. I think the motion referenced a structure, but this was an application to alter or extend a use, pre-existing non-conforming use.
oh, well, you know what, we have on the agenda, it says structure. Kelly, do we have, what does the actual application say? Do you have it right in front of you?
It says use. I have it in front of me.
Okay, so, you know what? Why don't you, just to be clear on the record, Jackie, why don't you amend your motion that it refer to changing or extending a non-conforming use?
I make a motion to change the verbiage of structure to use in my last motion. of
Second
10
that. Yep,
Yes.
second on that amendment.
Second.
Tom seconded it. Jackie, aye or nay?
Aye, aye.
Ray, Ms. Lepore? Right hand up, aye. Mr. Barletta
Yes,
and Mr. Syracusa,
Aye.
and then myself, aye. So we've got an amended motion which has been approved unanimously. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Thank
very
you
much.
very
Have a great evening.
Thank you for the good catch, counsel.
Have a good evening.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, the next item on the docket is case 720. Jeff and Rhonda Rubin, map 36, parcel 27, 44 Fair Meadow Road, and they're requesting special permit under 6.1.6.4 to extend a non-conforming structure. Who do we have representing the applicant? Anybody here, Mr. O'Neill, on behalf of the Rubins?
Yes, we have a gentleman under the Rhonda name.
Yep, Jeff Rubin.
Okay, I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, Jeff, why don't you let the board know what you're seeking, explain what you're looking for and what you want tonight.
Okay. Basically, we're looking to pass an addition, two-car attached garage addition. And we're in our plan, which I don't have in front of me to share with anybody, but I know we've put in all the paperwork. Where our physical house is non-conforming, and by putting the addition up, we're looking to not change anything. We're just looking to go out the side of the property where it only gets better as we get further away from our current house. I know it's supposed to be a 20-foot and 40 feet away from the property lines. Our current house is, because we sit on a corner, but as the property goes out, it actually increases in distance. So we're not going to be any detrimental, not any worse off going out on the property line.
You're not getting closer to the setback, you mean, by doing the addition?
We're getting further away from the setback with the addition.
I see. Okay. Do we have, now, Kelly, do we have a recommendation for planning on this one?
I do not, on any of the rest of
Same
the
reason they haven't
cases,
met yet.
correct.
Okay. Okay. Well, just so the board knows, these are things that we don't need the planning board's approval on it. Obviously it's going to be up to the board whether they want to take action without it. I would suggest, if there's fairly simple requests, that we not hold these folks back, but again, that's going to be up to the board. So what I'll do now is I'll open it up to the board if they have any questions or comments of the applicant, and then afterwards I'll go to open the public hearing.
Can
So-
I? Or-
Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So basically, when I'm looking at what I was given, I only have, yes, you mapped out like next to it. But if you're gonna come back, or I don't know, just saying, how come we're not getting what it looks like from the street view? Like, I don't know where are the dimensions of like how big this 2-car garage is going for height wise?
For height wise, it's a 2-car garage with an addition on top of it. The 2-story structure.
See, I wouldn't have known that from this, what I have.
Okay,
I think there's some information that's needed from my point of view.
okay. I don't have any architectural plans at the moment. We're working with an architect, but because of the COVID stuff, he hasn't been able to come to the house and do the measurements inside of our house in order to continue with with plans. So we're waiting on that.
Okay.
I don't know if it helps or hinders, but you should have the footprint of the proposed addition. It should be, and it should have the property line. It should have our whole property with the Fair Meadow Road and Nickel Street on the side. I can't see what you have, but I know we submitted everything.
Right, it's just, what I have is just a footprint, a box on the land, but I don't know what you're building, how high or anything from the street view or height wise or anything other than you're just going to the side of your house. I just think
Right,
it's a factor in my mind.
Okay, yeah, because again, we don't have anything from the architect at the moment, but we're trying to get all that stuff squared away.
Does anybody else have any other comment or question of the applicant?
Well, I guess the only, I mean, I don't have an issue with the size or the footprint of the addition because I think it's keeping within the original setback. But, you know, to Jackie's point, I mean, if we approve this, we're basically approving whatever this applicant decides to submit for an elevation. It could be a commercial looking garage, it could be anything. I think that it is a special permit and, you know, we would typically at least get an elevation so we know what we're approving. That's my first comment. And my only other comment is in some very recent applications similar to this that involve new septic systems or relocated septic systems, on at least one occasion and maybe 2 occasions, the septic system affected the final rendition of whatever it is they were going to build. I don't know if that's the case on this project because the lot seems to be, you know, maybe it's big enough to handle whatever they decide to do, but that is a potential concern that would change the final rendition of whatever they're going to build.
We've already had plans drawn up for the septic, which we do have to redo the septic, which is all part of the plan. It's already been approved through the town, and we did it through an engineering firm. We have all of the documentation. We've already done all the groundwater information. It's through I have through the Board of Health. I think it's there's a case number, I think, 200011270. I have it right here, approved from the Board of Health of the town of Wilmington. So we're ready to go with the septic, with the design and everything to conform to the bylaws. Our current tank, when it was installed, is only 5 feet off of the foundation, and it's supposed to be 10 feet. So we're going to conform to all the new guidelines set out by the Board of Health.
Okay.
Okay, but so with all due respect, it would be good to have all this information so that we could make or I could make personally a decision with all of the information together. Do you know what I'm saying? We
I
don't-
understand. I've never been through a town meeting before, so I apologize for not having all the,
No worries.
everything in line. But we can, once we get some plans from the architect, we can get you a rendition of what the proposed addition will look like. We're gonna try to stay and make it look uniform with everything else that's been put up in town. We're not going for an industrial look. We want to make it look cohesive to the neighborhood and to our physical structure that we're in.
Yeah, I'm not doubting that you would. It's just when we file this and when we approve it, we're approving the documents that are given to us. And if we are approving, I don't know, it's up to the rest of the board members as far as.
Well, no,
how they-
if two members are not prepared to vote on the application tonight, then it's not going to prevail. So if that's the case, then I would suggest, rather than opening a public hearing, we continue it to, is it gonna work a great hardship on you, Mr. Rubin, if we kick this over for one more meeting?
Just time, that's all, you know.
Right, but that's a standing hardship for everybody, I guess. But I
Right,
mean,
exactly.
so maybe what we can do, if the board is inclined, we can continue the matter, allow you to submit your septic plans along with a rendition of the actual building, and then maybe we can hear it and have a public hearing and dispose of it at the next meeting. Does that sound acceptable to the board?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's fine.
And
fine with
also-
me.
Well, everybody's talking at once. Who was that? Tom, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so, although not required, I feel uncomfortable voting for anything that doesn't have planning board weigh in. So I'm hoping that this will give enough time for the planning board to jump in on this.
Then you're probably going to have a problem with, I think, everything else that's on the agenda. Because I don't
Right.
think the planning board has weighed in on anything further other than, anything other than what we've already discussed. So, well, does somebody want to make a motion to continue this to our meeting of, Jackie, what's the next meeting date?
June 10th.
June 10th? Does somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to continue case 7-20, 44 Fair Meadow Road, to request a special permit 6.1.6.4 to extend a non-conforming structure to the next meeting, June 10th.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second,
We have a second by Mr. Barletta, and I'm going to take a roll call. Ms. Santini,
Yes.
Mr. Lepore, aye. Mr. Barletta,
aye.
Mr. Siracusa,
All right.
and then myself as well. So that's unanimous. We're going to kick it over to 6:10. If you could, Mr. Rubin, just submit a rendering of the actual physical premises along with whatever septic plan you have. And then we'll open up a public hearing and allow the public to comment on the fully presented project. Okay?
Absolutely, will do.
Okay.
Thank you very much. for your
Thank you,
time.
sir. I appreciate you coming in. All right. Yep. We'll see you next month. And the next matter on the docket is case 820, Kevin Carpenito, pardon me, map 7B, parcel 28, to request a special permit under 6.1.6.4 to extend a non-conforming structure. Is Mr. Carpenito here?
I am.
Hi, Mr. Carpenito. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
All right, hanging in there. So why don't you let the board know what you're looking for? Before you start, since Mr. Siracusa brought up the last matter where we didn't have a planning board recommendation, we don't have one on this either because they haven't had the meeting because of the current situation. So I just want to let the board know that. So if this is going to be similarly handled by the members who are so concerned, you might want to think about that when we discuss it. Okay. So Mr. Carpenito, let us know what you're looking for.
Okay, so it does say Matthew Company on the thing because I'm using my son's computer because it's better than mine, and my wife Carrie is
That's
here.
okay. We got Kevin on here, so we're good.
Okay, so I just wanted to thank you guys, but a quick little history. So we've lived in Wilmington since about 1998. We love the town, we love the neighborhood. Both our children have gone through Wilmington Public Schools. The addition is basically to add an attached garage with a bonus room above it. We're doing this to get more room so that my father can move in. He's 86 years old. He lives in Methuen alone. He just can't do it anymore. I definitely want you to know that this is in no way an in-law apartment. There's no plumbing. There's no sinks. There is no separate entrance. This is just a place so my father, if he lives with us, he can have some independence. He can go watch his cowboy stories and kind of get away from us for a little while. We have letters that we put in our packet from 3 neighbors on both sides, 51 and 55 North Street, and also across the street, who will be looking directly at the structure. They all approve of our project. I believe it will be actually aesthetically better for our house. It will not be an eyesore for the neighborhood. We have a little porch on the side, which is going to come off and is not very nice looking. If you look at the plot plan, the lots in the plot are all like weird or strange, or you guys know a lot more about it, but whoever subdivided it, they're all angled. So I believe makes us non-conforming in some way. So basically in closing, this is a very important decision for our family and for my father. And we're just trying to get a little more room. That's basically it.
Okay, we don't, like I mentioned, we don't have the planning board recommendation, but I think we have at least the type of drawings in this one that the members were looking for in the last one. There's a drawing of the actual physical building. So I think we can at least discuss it. Anyway, so why don't I open it to the board for any type of comments or questions of the applicant?
The non-conformity is the area, is that correct? What is the non-conformity?
So we're in an R20 and we're going closer than 20 on the side.
No, but what is the existing non-conformity?
So we're already 19.5 on the other side, which was the existing dwelling when we bought the house.
But isn't that the chimney? I didn't think the chimney counted for the setback within the setbacks.
It does.
That's not what I was told.
The chimney, Al said the chimney does count. He counts the chimney.
He does?
He
Okay,
does.
Does anybody else have any other questions on this application? No?
I guess I would wonder, if you, because the front seems a lot wider, was there any thought of, say scooching it down so it would be not as 10.9, but maybe to get it somewhere less if you brought it closer to the street? I'm just wondering.
So when he did the plans, I think he did think of that and tried to scooch it as much as he can. So there is like a weird stairwell that we have that goes down to our cellar, which is the only way to get in the basement.
On the outside.
It's on the outside now, but it will
Yeah.
end up being in the garage. So, and I'm not sure how much he could squish it up front. I don't know.
Okay, actually, it's probably only a difference of 4 feet, because if the stairwell looks like it's maybe 4 feet, then yeah. Well,
Does anybody else have any questions or comments on the application before I open up a public hearing?
you know, my only comment on this is that I think that this is really pushing the limits of what I think the special permit's for. I think that, you know, we get tear downs that come in all the time where they're trying to push the setbacks to get a house in. You know, here we have a lot that has a house in, and now we're trying to push the setbacks to make the house even bigger. And I just really, you know, we're in, R20 is 20,000 square feet as well, right, Jackie?
Yeah.
So the lot's undersized. So to me, the 19.5 feet to the chimney is something that, you know, applicant has kind of an advantage there because it is 19.5 feet, but the real nonconformity is the area. And I just really think this is pushing the limit. I mean, look, you know, we approve these special permits all the time for new homes on small lots, but, you know, I think approving this, and I'm not saying I wouldn't approve it, I think this just opens us up for a lot of these things coming in, and I think if we're gonna start approving these for this and not pushing back on the applicants, we're gonna get more and more of them, and the houses are gonna get more and more crowded. So that's my issue with all of these. It's always been. I have the same comment here in my same reaction to it that I do if this were a new house for a tear down. It's really pushing the limits for a lot that's already undersized. No, that's my comment.
Okay, anybody else?
Well, actually, how about, was it thought of to put the garage in the back? Like, I mean, is there another, have you looked at all possibilities of trying to, add something? I mean, I find it hard to kind of say, and I think Tony's right, that we're gonna get slammed with so many of these. Everybody wants to garage and add. I mean, you were here with the last case. I mean, he's gonna be looking for, everybody's getting a garage, a 2-car garage, and then they're adding above it.
I mean, there's room on this site to put a 16 by 20 addition behind the house easily.
So the septic is in the back.
The last applicant we just had come in is moving a septic system to put an addition on. So I think there are ways to get done what needs to get done without encroaching on setbacks. So I think at some point as a board, we need to decide, are we pushing the limits of, you know, is this more or less detrimental to the neighborhood? I just, you know, you could have an opinion that any addition is going to be no more detrimental to the neighborhood because it's making a bigger house. I don't necessarily agree with that, but you know, it's a tough decision for me because I think that I really believe that lots are sized with setbacks for a certain reason, and when we start to encroach on them too much, the neighborhoods get crowded, and that's not the intention of what zoning was set up for. So that's my opinion of this, and I don't want to be the bad guy on it, but it's how I feel, and it's how I've been very consistent with every case that's come before us.
You know, I'm going to ask Mr. O'Neill, Ray, is there any way you can fix your audio? I mean, you know, is there anything you can do? Because we can't, if you want to chime in on this, we really can't get your participation because we don't have any audio for you. I don't know if you, I have a daughter who's a tech assistant, so I don't know if you have a similar situation or if there's something that can be done.
I texted his son to see if he could help him, but he said he tried and he's not getting anything.
Yeah, I'm a little, I mean, this looks like there's a little, at least stated hesitance to vote on this. And I really would like a full complement of the board to chime in on it. Here's what I'm going to suggest. We have one member, Mr. Syracuse, who's already indicated he's not comfortable voting on anything without having the planning board's recommendation, which we do not have on this. So that's one guy. We got Ms. Santini and Mr. Barletta, who expressed some reservations with the actual plan. And now we have another member who can't contribute in the deliberation. So rather than open up the public hearing, I'm gonna suggest that maybe the board continue this matter to the next hearing. We'll get our technical glitches worked out with Mr. Lepore. We'll get our planning board recommendation, and then maybe we can have a fuller discussion with the input from the public. Is that something that the board thinks is advisable?
I think it's
I
excellent.
agree, Dan. I'd also encourage the applicant to, really look at a way to put this addition on that fits within his setbacks, because there is room on this site to increase the size of that house without asking for relief. And there's an easy way to do things and a hard way to do things, but easy way is not always right.
Okay. Well, it doesn't appear that we're going to be able to have any type of a substantive full discussion with the board right now. So why doesn't some member who's so inclined move to continue the matter, give the applicant time to maybe, if he has to tweak the plans, he can do so, and we get a planning board recommendation if that's the sentiment of the board.
So can I just ask a question? So are you telling me to tweak the plans, or?
No, you know
I
what?
don't really,
Here's the way it works. And I'm sorry, I keep mispronouncing your last name. Carpentino. Carpenito. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You got a plan that you need to get to prevail on this. You can only withstand one no vote. You need to get no. If you get two no votes, you're not going to get it.
okay,
You have one person who sounds like he's not inclined to vote for it. You have another person who sounds like perhaps she's not inclined to vote for it. You got a third member who doesn't want to vote on right up or down or anything until he gets a planning board recommendation. And we have another member who we don't know exactly how he feels. So I guess the best thing you could probably do at this point is to continue the matter. Maybe find a way, and I'm not telling you to do this, and I haven't given my opinion on it yet. But because I'd like to hear from the public as well. I understand you have abutters who have no problem with it. But I would suggest that maybe you continue to the next meeting, and then, go to your engineer and see if there's a way you can tweak it to satisfy the two members who appear to have reservations. That's the only thing I can say.
okay.
I wouldn't push it forward tonight because, I don't believe you'd prevail really. So I'm giving you an opportunity to kind of like come back next time and swing at it again.
So was the planning board something that we were supposed to do, or?
Everything that comes, no, you don't have, everything that comes before us gets sent to the planning board. They review it and they give a recommendation. It's non-binding. However, at least one member of the board doesn't feel comfortable moving forward with a decision until he gets what their recommendation is. So, and the planning board, because of the current situation, hasn't met on not only just your case, but on 3 of the cases tonight. So
I understand that, yeah.
yeah, so there's really nothing bad that can happen to you by kicking it over a month, except you lose a month of time.
Yeah, which is fine. So basically, we need to stay in the setback. So we won't get anything to that side.
That's not what I said.
I don't think, I didn't say that either. All I said is that I think that it's starting to push the limit of what's reasonable to get under a special permit, in my opinion. And I've been critical of other applications, and I'm very consistent in that. So I am not saying that I wouldn't vote for it or I would vote for it yet. I'm giving you my opinion. And I think that, I'd like to see a little due diligence to say, hey, there's wetlands in the back. We can't move the septic system. It's the only way we can do it, or something. Just to come in and say, here's what I want. And, for a lot that's undersized, a special permit, this bylaw to me is not the get out of jail free card for undersized lots. And that's the way I feel it's been treated that way for a long time, and I don't agree with it. Every board member can have their own opinion, and that's just the way I feel.
Okay. I wasn't even aware that it was an undersized lot, so that's how much, like, I know what's going on, so. Okay,
All right, is there a motion to continue the matter to the June 10th meeting? Anyone care to make that motion? Do any of the three members who weren't prepared to vote on it tonight willing to continue the matter to the next meeting?
Okay,
I'll
I'll
make a
continue,
motion to
I'll
continue.
continue it to the next meeting.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Is there a second on that?
Second.
All right, and so I'll go down the roll call. Ms. Santini?
Though I think Jonathan wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'm gonna address, I think he wants to see if there's a way Ray can call in. Ray, is there, but we do have hold on, we have a motion on the table. All right,
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I really don't want to interrupt. I just think the motion should be to continue to a date and time certain. I know you know when your next meeting is, but
yeah,
just
it's
for the record.
June 10th. Yeah, June 10th. Was that in your motion, Jackie?
No,
That
it's
was my motion.
Tom.
Or
Was my
Tom's
motion
motion,
in
yeah,
June.
to June 10th. Okay.
Right,
All right, so we have a motion on the table to continue this matter to our next regularly scheduled meeting of June 10th, 2020. We have a motion and it was seconded, and I'm going to go through the roll call. Ms. Santini,
Yes.
Mr. Lepore. He raising his right hand. Mr. Barletta,
Yes.
Mr. Siracusa,
aye,
and then myself. So that's going to be continued, sir, to our next scheduled meeting of June 10th.
okay.
Okay, and you can feel free, I mean, like, if you want to run anything by the members, as long as you don't have, speak to them in tandem, so it's a violation of the open meeting law. But if you have a concern, you want to take it to one of the members, maybe they can address it. That's up to them.
Okay.
So we're going to continue it to June 10th. And then Ray, I'm going to ask again, is there any way that you can call in on the instructions that I read out so we can hear your voice? Yeah, we can't hear you at all. All right. Well, you know what? We have one last matter on the docket, and I believe that may be a continuance as well. So why don't we move forward with that one? And let me read it into the record. It's case 920, Princeton Development LLC, map 89, parcel 8, 9, 10, 13A, and 13B, Middlesex Avenue and Jefferson Road, to acquire a comprehensive permit under Mass General Law, Chapter 40B. Now, I had understood from talking to Ms. Malatesta that this thing hasn't been through any of the predicate town boards that we would want to see before it comes to us. So it hasn't been through anybody. So, I don't know. And do we have somebody here on behalf of the applicant? 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so I guess you can, if you want to give us just a brief introduction as to what you're doing, that would be fine. But I can tell you from previous practice of the board, without it having gone through any type of other town review, that we're probably not going to be prepared to vote on it tonight. But have at it.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, for the record, Andrew Chapin with Princeton Development. My associates are with me tonight. I see that Councilor Silverstein is here as well. This is an application for a comprehensive permit for 108 apartment homes at the intersection of Middlesex and Jefferson. The Zoning Board of Appeals is the, other than the State Wetlands Protection Act, is the sole permitting body for this application. And it might be instructive, Mr. Chairman, if I might, to turn it over to Attorney Silverstein. He might be able to give the board some direction here.
That's all right with you, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to chime in here just on process because that helps.
Yep.
So generally speaking, you don't see comprehensive permit applications voted on in a single hearing session. This is obviously a substantial development. It's one that is supported by the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen voted to enter into an agreement with Princeton and to recommend approval of the project to the DHCD, the State Department of Housing and Community Development, which issued what's called the project eligibility letter, which is the initial approval from the state that's required to submit a comprehensive permit application to the Board of Appeals. I'll let the applicant describe the project, but one thing that the project would do, it's what's called a so-called friendly 40B or a local initiative project. And one of the benefits to the town of it is that it would put the town back over that magic 10% threshold by which the town would become protected from less friendly 40B applications, which could come down the road at any point. Usually what happens in comprehensive permit application proceedings before a Board of Appeals is that you will get input from all the different town boards and town departments that are relevant. But another thing that's common is that the first public hearing session would be a general introduction of the project by the applicant. I know the applicant has some plans and elevations to show you. And then the board, I would recommend, should vote to authorize the planning department to retain peer review consultants. And it's up to the board, obviously, which subject areas. Typical would be traffic, civil engineering. The civil engineering would include issues relating to stormwater, which may be a particular issue here with the brook nearby. And it's up to the board, obviously, if there are any other subject areas you want to look at. So
my only problem, Jonathan, and it's probably one that you share, is that we have a member who can't communicate with the other members. So I don't know how you how you suggest that we deal with that, even if it's just an introductory meeting.
Well, I did have a thought on that, and perhaps Mr. Lepore has just a landline or a cell phone that he could call into the number, and Mr. O'Neill could allow him to speak. He could press the *9. I don't know if Mr. O'Neill has any. Clearly, his computer audio isn't working, but maybe just a good old-fashioned phone line would work.
We had told his son that. I don't know if it was told to Ray. We had messaged his son and told him he could call in. So
I'm
we can try
also
again.
I wonder if it's his headset, that if he unplugs his headset, he might get it back. I don't know.
Sometimes when you do plug in your headset, it detects that it might be a mic. I've seen that
Can you hear me
happen.
now?
So I mean,
Oh,
There
yes,
he is.
yes,
we
Yeah.
keep.
there he is.
You hear me?
yes.
Okay, I'm gonna try to plug it back in. Maybe I'll lose you. Let's see what happens.
All right.
Can you hear?
We lost you again. You had
Yeah,
it though.
no,
Ray.
Yeah, unplug it.
It's the headset.
How about now?
Yes.
All right, let me play with a few more gadgets, but go ahead.
No,
That's
don't
fine.
play with anything, Ray. We got it. You got it.
All right, that's
You
right.
need to stay right where we are. Don't move a gall darn inch, like they say up in Maine. Okay?
Yep.
All right.
One issue solved.
Okay. All right. So then why don't you go ahead and present us with the at least initial introduction to your project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will move it along, and I will introduce our team members to you, outline what we had hoped to accomplish this evening. And then I think Attorney Silverstein said it well. We would expect that on the civil engineering side, that you would hopefully choose a peer review engineer. You will hear from our engineer this evening. We hope you will choose a peer review engineer so they can get started working with your town staff to look over the plans that we've drawn. I think it is important to reiterate that that Princeton is the applicant, and we own and manage over 7,000 apartment homes. We're located in the Merrimack Valley. We've been based in Lowell, Massachusetts since 1973. The founder of the firm is still the chairman of the board of the firm, and we still have the very first 24 apartment home building right across from Lowell General Hospital on Varnum Avenue when the company started. So we're long-term holders and operators of real estate right in your backyard. With me this evening is my business partner, Dan Endike, our colleagues, Jeff Brown and Andrea Lathrop, and our civil engineer from Hancock Associates, Joe Pesnola. It's important to start out by saying that this is not the first board that we have been before. The normal process would be to start with you, but we took a little bit different tact and went directly to the Board of Selectmen to start with, given the fact that the town is sort of teetering at its 10% threshold, and went to the board and asked them if they would like us to participate in this way in what is known as a friendly 40B, as Attorney Silverstein outlined to you. And we were fortunate in that we found a receptive audience, and that the selectmen have in essence decided to partner with us here, and this project comes to you with their endorsement of it in concept.
Hey, Andrew, can I catch you for a second? We want to take over the screen if we can. We have the PowerPoint to put up if possible. Is that something we can?
Yeah, that's something any participant can do in this meeting.
Terrific. So
there we
there
go.
it is. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
So to start with the project, we can tell you that the engineer for the project, Joe Pesnola, is on the line with us. The architect is Rob Schaefer, and along with his partner, David White. Rob and David have been the architect for several of our most recent projects in the town of Westford, in the town of North Andover, and in the town of Chelmsford. They're used to working with the project team, and we have the advantage of, if to the extent that any of the board members would like to do a tour there, or if they'd like to simply drive through, those towns are all relatively close to Wilmington, and I think they all represent our company and the project team well, and we would be more than happy to have you drive through them, or happy to take any individual member through at their election. Also on the project team is Jeff Dirk, who is a principal with Vanessa and Associates. Jeff has turned in a traffic memo to the board, and he'll be doing a much more involved study. But I think the important part for the board is his conclusions that there will be no level of service change and no appreciable change to traffic on Middlesex as a result of our project, and that memo has been turned into your technical staff, Mr. Chairman. On the next slide, please, Andrea. As I had mentioned, Princeton is a firm that owns and operates over 7,000 apartment homes in New England. On the screen in a moment, hopefully, we will see the next slide that shows our apartment community locations all through Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine, and our coming projects. I don't know if Andrea can advance that slide.
I'm sorry, I don't know why it's not moving forward, Andrew.
Okay, well, we can keep going. The important part of the PowerPoint there is to show you the breadth of our apartment homes in New England, everywhere throughout the Merrimack Valley, through the city of Boston, through Nashua, and into upper New Hampshire. We are there we go. We are the largest landlord in the city of Lowell, in the city of Nashua, and in the city of Portland, Maine. So I think that hopefully will speak volumes about who we are and sort of what kind of a company we are and can operate. We were founded in 1973. We are a one-trick pony, so to speak. We are in the multifamily space. We don't do anything else. We don't build hotels or retail shops or office buildings, et cetera. We are strictly in the multifamily business. We are somewhat agnostic as to the capital stack. In this particular case, we're talking about a property that is the supermajority of which is market rate multifamily. 80% of the 108 homes will be market rate. There'll be 20% of the homes that will be based on affordability so that we can comply with the zoning that's been chosen here. And maybe Andrea, you can go to the next slide. The development will be known as Princeton Wilmington Apartment Homes. It's a 23-acre parcel located at the intersection of Jefferson and Middlesex. This will be a absolute Class A, brand new garden-style apartment community. We said that it's being developed under Massachusetts General Law 40B, but the most important part is that this is as a local initiative petition in partnership with the town itself. We will be providing 11 three-bedroom apartment homes, 43 two-bedroom apartment homes, and 54 one-bedroom apartment homes. So roughly 50% ones, 40% twos, and 10% threes. Those 10% threes are what are required by law. There'll be amenity space for the residents, including a central leasing office and a state-of-the-art workout facility, probably one in each of the two buildings. When we get to the site plan, you'll see that in a moment. The front building contains garage parking, and the back building has exterior garage bays around it, as well as surface parking, and there'll be resident storage provided as well. Just to quickly recap what Chapter 40B is, it's a state statute that allows you, the Zoning Board of Appeals, to approve housing developments under flexible rules as long as 20% of the apartment homes have long-term affordability restrictions. Under the development agreement that has been finalized with the Board of Selectmen, these apartment homes, the affordable component will be affordable for as long as law allows. I know that Attorney Silverstein would jump out of his chair if I said perpetuity, so it's whatever is just short of perpetuity is how long we have agreed to deed restrict the affordable apartment homes. You can see that there'll be 11 one-bedroom, 9 two-bedroom, and only 2 three-bedroom units that will be designated in the affordable category. That's pro rata, if you will, out of the 108. The affordable units will be evenly distributed throughout and will be indistinguishable. They'll have the same unit finishes and the same features. I'd like to turn it over to my partner, Dan Endyke, and he can take it from here. Dan?
Thanks, Andrew. And for the record, Dan Endyke, obviously also with Princeton Properties. A quick side story about Wilmington. The first 40B that we ever did at Princeton was in Wilmington, and it was, I hate to say this, 20 years ago. It was subsequently sold to Avalon, and it became Avalon Oaks West. So they have Avalon Oaks and Avalon Oaks West, and we were the initial developer of that project. And we also were a development consultant and a property manager for Regency Place in Wilmington. So we have some history in the town, and we're really happy to be back before you this evening. I'm going to just quickly walk through the timeline that is before you. As Attorney Silverstein mentioned, we were endorsed by the Board of Selectmen as a LIP project back in January. That endorsement allowed us to pursue site approval through DHCD and to obtain a project eligibility letter from the state that was just received 10 days ago. So we've been going at a fairly quick pace, and also very appreciative of working with with the town and having the application and the pieces come in over time instead of all at one submission. But we put that together, that's in, and that got us to today. Not in the timeline, but I'll mention it, and Attorney Silverstein, you also mentioned this, but and it's part of the submission package is that we submitted a copy of the memorandum of agreement between Princeton and the town that outlines, it's a 10-page document that goes through the terms and condition that the town is requiring for the development to move forward. And we've obviously accepted all of those. For the sake of expediency, and I'll highlight why expediency is the word, we have made concurrent filings with the zoning, with your board, and also with the Conservation Commission with an ANRAD filing. We're before them next week. And this is all being done to try to move as quickly but as thoroughly as possible, because there's a critical component to this development, and that is to get it into a position by late July so that the town is able to make formal application for a $2 to $2.5 million MassWorks grant that will fund the extension of the town's sewer line and other infrastructure improvement from where it is today, Salem Street, all the way down Middlesex and into the development site. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. The application for calendar year 2020, the deadline for MassWorks is expected to be August 1st. And in order for you to be determined a eligible applicant for this program, you have to show that you're a shovel-ready project. The loose definition for a 40B to be shovel-ready is the issuance of a comprehensive permit. And that's why, you know, the timeline may appear to be somewhat aggressive. But we firmly believe we can get through the necessary steps over the next 6 to 8 weeks, including, you know, presentations from our project architect, from our traffic engineer, as well as getting the project peer reviews rolling and hopefully getting those commenced and authorized this evening as the board directs. And then we'll be in a position to hopefully see this through. And we realize, I guess, I want to say that without this being a LIP, and we've never done a LIP before. We've always wanted to do a LIP. We've never had the chance to. And it's been so refreshing to kind of go arm in arm and have interest aligned with the town for a quality development project. I think if it weren't a LIP, we would be much less enthusiastic about the ability to get through this process with your board over the next 6 to 8 weeks. You know, that enthusiasm would be tempered, and you know, there's a lot of moving pieces here that we're trying to ground, and it's been very gratifying to see that happen over the past few months. So just wanted to kind of go over that timeline, and then I think next we'll have Joe walk through the site plan before you, and we can, you know, take it from there. So with that, you know, Joe, if you're there, if you can grab the screen and take the reins.
Sorry, having a little trouble getting unmuted. Good evening, members of the board. Again, for the record, Joe Pesnola from Hancock Associates. I've been working for Princeton for 25 years as their primary engineer, so a long history of working on some really quality projects. Just want to walk through this, and if I could get control of the screen, if I don't already have it. Share screen. Everyone see that now?
We can, Joe.
Okay, so as Andrew said, it's a 23-acre parcel, currently partially developed. The parcel runs along the railroad, which is the commuter rail, and Middlesex Avenue. and Jefferson runs through the middle. As we come off of Middlesex, on the left-hand side is the commuter parking lot, and there's an office building just after the commuter parking lot, and there's a vacant parcel along the railroad. Those parcels there are not involved, but the balance of the site is what is the project site. On the right side of Jefferson currently, there is a small retail strip buildings, 2 buildings that have various retail type tenants in them, and that's part of the project site. And additionally, at the back, on the end of Jefferson, there's a parking lot that is essentially unused. I think it was originally built as when the office building was built, but is not ever used. So this is partially a redevelopment site, redeveloping that front piece and redeveloping the back where the parking lot is, and essentially utilizing Jefferson, but making some improvements to it. As far as the site topography and other resource areas, we do have Lubbers Brook that runs along kind of the east edge of the property. So we're bounded by the railroad and Lubbers Brook. With Lubbers Brook, we have a riverfront that I'm showing in green here, that casts a 200-foot area into the site that we'll have to deal with conservation on. And we've got a bordering vegetated wetland, which is in purple here, that runs kind of coincident with Lubbers Brook. And there's another small wetland area on the left-hand side of Jefferson as you come in, and there's a culvert that goes under Jefferson. So the project itself is in 2 pieces, essentially. We've got building A, which is out front, redeveloping that front strip retail area, and building B, which is in the back where that parking lot is. And we will be making improvements to Jefferson. We're going to pull it out to 24 feet wide. We're going to put a full sidewalk, vertical granite curbing, street trees, and really make some improvements. And obviously that will continue to service the office building and the commuter rail lot. So looking at the first site, the building A site, we will have the L-shaped building is here. Access to the underground parking will be off of Jefferson back here. And we will have a curb cut off of Middlesex and a curb cut off of Jefferson to an exterior parking lot there. There are 98 spaces associated with the 50 units that will be in building A, which is a 4-story building with parking under. And of that, 46 of the spaces will be under the building with the balance out of the building. We've made provisions for snow storage and dumpster trash collection in here. This is really the curb cuts on both Middlesex and Jefferson are closing off what is now an expanse of pavement, a very wide curb cut on Middlesex and kind of an expanse of pavement along here where the existing retail building is, and people park kind of utilizing Jefferson to pull in and out. So that is a building A, and you can see here is the limits of the existing pavement. So we are expanding a bit out here behind the current developed portion, but the majority of that development is kind of within that developed portion of the parcel. Building B, the one that's out back, is 50 units. It will be a 4-story building. There will not be parking underneath it. All of the parking will be surface. Additionally, there'll be 15 parking spaces or parking provisions for parking of 15 vehicles inside a 9-bay single-story parking garage here and a 6-bay parking garage here. And those are just very small structures with demising walls between them, garage door out front. Just kind of an extra amenity for some of the residents that would utilize those. We do have a provision for snow storage against the railroad and trash removal here. And again, the improved Jefferson comes down along the same pathway. There's existing retaining walls as we cross in between these two wetlands. We're going to utilize those existing retaining walls, and within that retaining wall, add the sidewalk and the widened, improved roadway. And back here, you can see this is the outline of the existing pavement. So it's about half of the development would be redevelopment and half would be new development. As far as kind of running very quickly through the utilities, we'll get more into this with the peer review engineers. But right now, there's on-site septic systems for the retail centers out front. There is a connection to town water and fire hydrants, but there's no provision whatsoever for stormwater. Everything just cheats off into the wetlands and into Lover's Brook. And we're wholesale upgrading that to a fully compliant Mass DEP stormwater system that will include 3 underground systems for building A, one here, one out in front, and one along Jefferson that'll take care of the little piece of driveway that goes down into the garage. So provides the treatment, the attenuation, the recharge, all of the good stuff that we do these days with stormwater that wasn't done when we back there. This project, as Dan mentioned, will bring sewer to the area. We will bring a gravity line down the hill from Salem Street, down Middlesex. And the project will facilitate the installation of a municipal pump station. So all of the sewer will come down gravity and then pump back up that same route to Salem. So this building will be tied into that new sewer, and the sewer line will extend back to building A. So back to building B. So building B will have 2 new stormwater systems. These are larger because there's more new pavement out here, but same thing, providing the treatment, the attenuation, the recharge, all of the requirements of Mass DEP stormwater in that package. The water already, the municipal water line already extends back here. There's a hydrant back here. We will tap into that for domestic and fire protection for the buildings. Both buildings will be fully sprinkled. And we'll work with the fire department to get hydrants wherever they see fit to be there. And again, sewer will come out and back down into that same system. We've provided, in accordance with the 40B regulations, preliminary landscape plans, some preliminary lighting plans for both of the sites. Project details that the civil engineering peer review can look at, erosion and sedimentation control plans. So it's a fairly comprehensive set of plans, even though a 40B only requires them to be preliminary. We strongly believe that they are ripe for that intensive peer review. Within the set is a fire access plan and swept path analysis that shows that we can get Wilmington fire trucks in and out of the site, in and around the back site, and 2 key locations within the site fully compliant with the fire access regulations in the state of Massachusetts. But again, we'll work closely with the fire department to make sure that their access is what they believe it needs to be, and again, hydrants are where they need to be to support that. Moving forward, we'll do that. One of the nuances of this site, and we've been working closely with town staff on, is the zoning board is going to be asked to take the role of the planning board in a subdivision. Currently the lot lines do not match what we've described as the 23-acre new parcel. This office building lot actually runs out back. So this lot line right here that creates this new compliant lot 2 for the office building is kind of part of the package and will be part of the zoning board action as we're moving forward. The other nuance of this is to do that in the town of Wilmington. This plan is this subdivision is not ripe for what's known as an approval not required subdivision. So we're being asked to go through full subdivision control, but with the zoning board in the place of the planning board to ultimately endorse a subdivision plan that can be recorded that creates the development lot. Key component of that is this lot 2 that is not included in the comprehensive permit is not seeking any waivers. It is a fully compliant lot. In fact, the new lot, the development lot, is also fully compliant. So there are no waivers that are associated from a zoning standpoint with frontage or lot area or anything that we need. It's just process-wise, the zoning board is taking all of the powers, the local powers, and all of those powers are subsumed into one process. And we can go into more details as we get deeper into that, but I did want to introduce that as kind of a component of the project. As a 40B, we are and have requested certain waivers from local requirements of both zoning and I think the main ones are zoning and Conservation Commission local wetland bylaws, and we've enumerated those on the front on the cover sheet or the title sheet of our plan set, and there's also a separate list that's been included in the package. Some of the high points to that waiver list are use. This is general business zoning district and multifamilies not allowed. So one of the waivers will be to allow multifamily use in that. And the other waivers are again, they're enumerated both there and in the application package. I think the other one that is critical to note is the height waiver. But we did work with the selectmen in the development agreement to come up with what they believe to be acceptable height parameters, and we're within those, but technically not within the zoning requirements. So that's another waiver. And I think maybe at a future meeting we can spend more time kind of going through each of those waivers and kind of calling them out on the plan with regards to the relief that's needed. I believe that, I guess the last thing I will go through is kind of another component to the MassWorks grant portion of this project, one of the benefits of the project. For those of you that don't know anything about the MassWorks program within the state, within the Commonwealth, basically it's what it is it partners private developers with municipalities to fund infrastructure improvements that may be out of scale with the project itself. The project can absorb the cost of new sewer and in this case, a new culvert under Middlesex Avenue for Lover's Brook. So the MassWorks program, in the spirit of trying to spur economic development, infuses that money through the town that's related to the project. So the economic development happens with regards to maybe developing properties that would otherwise not be developable or developable to this scale without that infrastructure improvements, and the town gets much needed infrastructure improvements. So one of the components is the sewer that we talked about from Salem down to this area, which will avail sewer to the neighborhoods and the commercial properties down in this area and in whatever form and quantity that the town believes is right and ready. The second piece is that the culvert under Middlesex Avenue for Lover's Brook is in disrepair. And we had discussions with the town engineer with regards to that. It's somewhere between an $800 million project that just can't get the funding, can't get high enough on the list. But Mr. Looney believes that it's a very necessary project, and this partnership and this MassWorks grant will hopefully be able to remedy that situation there with the culvert. So I believe that's my presentation with regards to kind of the engineering component of the project. I'm happy to answer any questions and release control of the screen.
Anybody else from the applicant wish to be heard on it?
Mr. Chairman, I think that completes what we had intended to offer you this evening. We'd love to get some feedback from you folks, and I think there are a couple of action items that we would request of you this evening if you deem it appropriate. Number one, obviously, we need to make sure that the town has a peer review engineer to be able to work with Mr. Pesnola to make sure that the town's interests are protected, so that everything that Joe is presenting to you guys is looked at. That is something that the development agreement calls for, and that the applicant, us, will pay for. And I believe that staff has provided the board with several thoughts about a grouping of peer review engineers for the board to choose from. We have no opinion there. Whoever the town chooses to work with Joe is absolutely fine. Second thing I wanted to make sure we point out is that starting next Wednesday, we will be before the Conservation Commission for a abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. Joe and his team have worked with other stakeholders for Lover's Brook to make sure that we have tried to take into account everyone's interests here. So we're presenting you a plan. The same plan will be presented to the Conservation Commission. And we're hopeful that the engineering firm that you choose will also be the engineering firm that will be chosen for the Conservation Commission, so we don't have competing priorities there. But that certainly is up to each individual board to choose, but we've sort of made that preference known to town staff. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we stand open for any questions you may have.
Well, I have an initial question. Maybe town council Attorney Silverstein can help us out on this. Are you familiar with the proposed peer review experts that have been presented to the board? Are you familiar with any of them?
Yeah, they're all major engineering consulting firms. They're all very reputable. My firm has worked with all of them, on one side or another. I think more importantly, town staff has worked with them, and I think they have a level of comfort. So my recommendation generally here is, unless a board has worked with a particular consultant and really feels strongly that they want to work with that consultant, I usually say, it's best left to staff, and that perhaps the board wants to authorize the planning department in consultation with DPW to identify and retain the peer review consultants. And maybe that would be also in consultation with the conservation agent, because
I think
since
that
you do have. Okay.
Yeah, I think that might be probably helpful, because this obviously is not my area of forte. But if the town has worked with a particular group or organization or individual, and they feel a level of comfort, I think that that probably would be, from my opinion, the best way to go, rather than just, picking one out or go and do some type of rudimentary research where you really don't have any hands-on experience. So that's just my initial comment. But I will, at this point, I guess, that was the action item was the peer review, and what else? Were you had two action items?
The only other action item, Mr. Chairman, is just to go over the schedule. I don't know which member of staff is there. As Mr. Endyke pointed out, we have a fairly aggressive timeline, and we had roughed out with town staff the thinking. It would mean that there would be more than one meeting a month. And so we would ask for indulgence of the board to meet twice a month as opposed to once a month, so that we can meet.
Starting when, in June?
I believe Ms. Gingrich is probably on the line, and I believe she has the schedule that's there, but starting with this meeting, and then we're looking, we actually have proposed a schedule to town staff, and I believe it's it's every other Wednesday, I believe.
From here on until August?
From here on until it's necessary. I certainly hope you don't need to go to August, but I'm hoping it certainly won't need that many meetings, Mr. Chairman, but that just gives time, just because there's July 4th and other things. We want to make sure we have a quorum. So we've tried to leave ourselves some choking room.
Okay, understood. Okay, I'll open it up to any comments that any members of the board may have, or questions of the applicant to the initial presentation. Then what I'm inclined to do is, once we've gone through that, I'll at least open up the public hearing. I won't close it, obviously, since it's going to be ongoing. But I wouldn't have a problem with opening that up. So why don't we first go to the board? Anybody who has any questions or comments at the applicant?
I have a few questions, Dan. When Andrew, when you discussed the schedule, you talked about the schedule was based on achieving a successful FastWorks grant. The other part of the schedule that I'm interested in is, and I've been following along with the planning board and in some of the other meetings that they've had. This has to follow a certain schedule, or else this project would not count towards our inventory, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't there a date that you have to hit in order for that to happen, or else this whole attempt to do this friendly 40B is for naught?
Mr. Barletta, it's two excellent questions. The first has to do with the MassWorks grant. The MassWorks application the MassWorks program has not announced the exact date that they will open, but following last year's dates and having MassWorks staff tell us that the dates are likely to approximate within a week's period of time last year's, the applications will be due the first week in August, and they will make those awards no later than the first week in November of 2020. And that dovetails into your second question, which is what happens with the town's 10%. I believe that what Ms. Gingrich, who's your planning and conservation director, has said is that the town, based on the 2020 census, is likely to be below your 10% threshold. This project, and I feel comfortable saying this because I believe we're in partnership with the town and the selectmen on this. This project would give you enough apartment homes, and all of the units count because it's a rental project, not a home ownership project. This would get you up to and above, with some cushion, the number that would propel the town above its 10%. The next census doesn't happen until the year 2030. So I believe that that the selectmen, and I'll let Attorney Silverstein chime in here to verify this, but I believe one of the compelling pieces to the selectmen wanting to partner with us on this deal is that this puts you in a position where you are no longer required, if you will, to hear certain projects. You could hear projects at the town's election only, but nothing could be, if you will, forced upon you. And maybe Attorney Silverstein can say it in a more eloquent way than I.
Sure, I can chime in on that. You know, one thing to bear in mind is that even at a time, you know, right now there is what's called the Subsidized Housing Inventory, the SHI, that is published by DHCD. And that shows the town of Wilmington as being over 10%. However, that is presumptively valid. However, were an applicant to come in and challenge that, I'm not giving anything away, it's been publicly announced, the town has in fact fallen below that. And so, you know, it can be challenged in both directions. So even if the SHI showed the town as being under, if we in fact had gone over and this project would put us back over, we can always take advantage of demonstrating that were there to be a less friendly project proposed. You know, and one thing I want to mention is that because of the number of year-round housing units in the town, I believe, and Valerie can correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're between 5,000 and 7,500. So you could have up to 300 units proposed in one development somewhere in town. So the fact that the town would be getting back over 10% with 108 unit development is obviously advantageous.
So to be clear, that somebody could effectively challenge our position right now and either win or fail. But technically, if nobody challenged anything, there would be no issue until the 2030 census.
Well, no, because the 2020 census, believe it or not, the SHI based upon the 2020 census has not yet been issued.
So, but I thought you projected that we would be okay for the 2020 census.
No, the current SHI shows the town as being over 10%.
Oh, but after the 2020 census.
But that's based on the 2010 census.
So after the 2020 census is complete, it's projected that we would not be over.
There's some
Maybe.
risk.
There's risk there. Okay. The other question I had is on the Mass Works grant. Part of it is for the culvert potentially replacement, which seems like it would be a nice to have, but not maybe necessary for this project. The grant for the sewer work is probably a must-have in order to complete this project. If for some reason the MassWorks grant didn't get awarded to this project or to Wilmington, what would happen to the project?
The project would be unable to move forward, Mr. Barletta.
But if I could jump in, just one important point. Once the board issues the comprehensive permit, for 1 year, the town gets credit for those units.
Correct.
And so there would be at least some breathing room there to try to find something else. If after 1 year, building permits haven't issued for the project, those units fall back off the SHI.
Okay. Those are the questions I had initially.
Anybody else wish to pose any questions or make any comment?
Yeah, I guess I'm not really clear on why these questions are being asked, since I'm more focusing on the zoning board's requirements to get this thing moving forward and all the checkoffs that make it happen. And so I'd like to see more of that, more of the checkoffs with the planning board and the other town boards, and the studies with the police and fire and all of that to make it more of a package. I'm a little bit concerned where we're kind of backing into it because we have to be rushed, or we have timelines, or we have census, which really doesn't have any privy with the board. So I'm a little bit concerned about that.
Mr. Syracuse, we Monday morning at 9:30, we have an interdepartmental review meeting with all of your town boards and all your staff. So we're required to open with you and give you an overview of the project. Now that the hearing has been opened, and I assume that will be continued, we will meet with all relevant town staff, the town engineer, Ms. Gingrich, and police, fire, conservation, everybody else on Monday morning. And we will go through that in a call similar to this. They will forward all of their individual reports to the board. And I would suspect before we meet with you again, you will have heard in writing from each of the town boards of jurisdiction.
And I think that's an excellent segue to the next meeting, to have that, because that's important to us in making our decision. So we talk about the need for it, and we talk about how important it is and all of that. That's all fine. That's all good. To me, that's extraneous. I think as a board, at least I feel we should focus on what you're asking now is the buy-in of all the different elements of each board.
Agreed completely.
That's great news.
We'll have the meeting with all your town staff Monday morning. And if your town staff is designated to authorize the peer review, the next time we meet, they should have been able to review Mr. Pesnola's plans as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Hey, Jonathan, I do have another question. I did watch the selectmen meeting the other night where they voted on the, or discussed and voted on this project. Just to be clear, what it sounded like what they voted on was the, I thought it was how the market rate units would be applied. Is that correct?
I think I can address that. I didn't watch that meeting, but I believe what the intent was to have the Board of Selectmen weigh in on one component of this project, which I don't think has been touched on. As Mr. Chapin indicated, 20% of the units are going to be affordable at a certain level of affordability. Under state guidelines at this point, the town is allowed to have what's called a local preference for up to 70% of those units. So 20% of the units is 22, 70% of those 22 affordable units will have a local preference for Wilmington. And what's allowed to be in that local preference, I don't think we need to get into the weeds at this point. At some point, the board likely will want to get into that. But what type of people are allowed to be in the Wilmington local preference? It's sort of a menu of 4 different classes of people that DHCD will allow. And my understanding was that the town manager was going to sort of put that in front of the Board of Selectmen to see what their preference was. So I think that's what you were addressing. And I wanted to just follow up on Mr. Chapin's response to Tom's question. The comprehensive permit statute it's unique. It's not something I think that the board has had to deal with for a little while anyway. The standard for whether to grant a comprehensive permit, and that includes all of the waivers that are being requested from all local requirements. The standard is that the board is supposed to make a determination. It's required to grant the comprehensive permit unless there's some local concern in one of the waivers being requested that outweighs the regional need for affordable housing. And so when we're talking about what that need is, the level of affordable units in the town is shorthand for that discussion, that regional need for affordable housing. So and we're not going to be in this position, I don't think, but if there were a denial and if there were an appeal of that denial to the Housing Appeals Committee, the Housing Appeals Committee would be looking at whether the town has demonstrated there's some local concern based in a local requirement of your zoning bylaw or your wetlands bylaw that outweighs the need for affordable housing. And I can tell you that from the state standpoint, I want to say something on the order of 99% of those cases are decided against municipalities.
So that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to, let's say as an example, there was a traffic study, and it was determined that the project was not conducive to the traffic in the area, or in fact, let's say police and let's say fire department didn't have the capacity to handle that many units at any given time, as an example. Are you saying if that was the case, we'd be forced to vote on it anyway because it was a
No,
what are you
no.
saying?
So, I mean, Tom, you're absolutely right. You need to have that information. But the other piece of your question was sort of wondering why we were talking about how many affordable units there are in town, how this is, talking about the level of affordability in the census and the subsidized housing inventory. And the reason we have to talk about that is that's the other side of the equation. You take all of that important information about traffic and public safety, and then that has to be weighed against the need for affordable housing. So no, all of your points are absolutely on point. It's just that the board does need to be aware of some of these other issues we were talking about.
Mr. Chairman, I also think it's important to Mr. Syracuse's question. All of the civil engineers' drawings have been turned into the town. The traffic memorandum has been turned in. All of those things are what the town staff will be reviewing on Monday at 9:30.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Does anybody else wish to have a comment or a question?
Yeah, actually, I do. So I wanted to kind of like clarify. You made a comment about the height and about the parameters, and are you saying that the selectmen or there was some other group that you got some kind of okay for the height? What was your comment with that?
Sure.
Because 4 stories,
Yep, let me see if we can clarify that. The Board of Selectmen in the development agreement, which each of the members should have a copy of, in that development agreement, it says that the buildings will be no more than a certain height, in this particular case, 55 feet. So the buildings were designed to that development agreement's parameters. So we've stayed within the development agreement parameters. We've had, as things have moved forward, we've kept Jeff Hull involved in sort of what the plans have looked like. He's gone through that with the planning director, with the town engineer, and with Attorney Silverstein to make sure that we are submitting something to you that is compliant with the development agreement. So that's where the height proposal comes from. Under Chapter 40B, we can come to you with a proposal that exceeds what the town would normally allow in a multifamily district, and that's what we've done here. But we've stayed within the parameters of that development agreement.
the development agreement was with you and the selectmen.
That's correct. That is correct. That is not binding on the zone. I mean, it is the deal, if you will, that we made so that the selectmen would be comfortable and partner with us on this project to move it to you. But the zoning board is the only one who ultimately votes as to whether we do or don't get a comprehensive permit. Strictly in the hands of the zoning board, but to get the Board of Selectmen's endorsement for a local initiative petition, they wanted to see, what the project might look like in gross, and that's what we've done with them. And the project had, a height limitation put on as part of that development agreement, and we've stayed within that height agreement. Attorney Silverstein, did I say that properly?
Yes, and just to point out, Jackie, the development agreement makes very clear that the Board of Selectmen wasn't purporting to take the place of the ZBA, and it expressly says all of this is subject to the ZBA approving the comprehensive permit.
Yeah, but I have to say that they basically put out there an agreement of, 4 stories. What do you expect us to come back to say, like, no? Like, what are we supposed to, gonna make any changes? 4 stories right there on Middlesex? That's pretty high. When considering just next door, we had them, there was obviously an issue with the parcel next door about the height.
So I think we could probably get to the height issue very quickly for you. The number of apartment homes that will fit on the site, there were other developers that were talking about building more than double the number of apartment homes that we talked about on the site, crossing wetlands, going to 3.5 acres of an upland parcel, potentially disturbing areas in and around Lover's Brook. We chose not to do that. We came in with a proposal that was well less than half of what had been talked about by a previous developer who had approached the town. To get the number of apartment homes on the site to make it economically viable, which the minimum was 108, and that's the agreement that we had with the selectmen. To do that, we have used all of the upland. We have respected even more area around Lover's Brook and made sure that we've done everything we can to leave as much of that area that might be questionable resource area. We've simply said, okay, we'll consider that as resource area. To get 108 apartment homes on the site, we have to go 4 stories to do that. There is, as you probably saw from the site plan, and I'm sure the town staff will certainly weigh in here, there is no other room on the site to put more buildings and less height. So we went to 2 buildings at 4 stories to be able to keep the amount of resource area that was there without infringing on that. So that's the reason for the number of stories.
So if that's the case, then how would somebody come along and try to jam 300 plus houses in there?
I think what they were planning on doing is filling wetlands under a limited, as I understand what they were planning on doing, which is not something we would do. Under limited project, they were going to try and fill wetlands from that back area where building B is and access a 3.5 acre upland parcel that's sort of detached, if you will, from this. It's not something that Princeton ever considered. It's not something that we have any interest in doing, but the previous developer had drawn plans for that and had approached the town with those plans. And I think that was frankly dead on arrival, and I'll let the town, speak on that piece. But our proposal is well less than half of what they had even envisioned.
They could also, Jackie, that a developer could propose to go up higher. A developer could propose a 5 or 6 story building. I don't think the risk is that sort of hostile 40B development on this site, primarily because it would require one of 2 things, either an on-site treatment plant or the town's cooperation in extending sewer, which no developer can force the town to do that. And an on-site sewer treatment plant is obviously expensive, but if someone were to come in and propose that, then to justify that expense, the state would probably let them go up much higher and have a lot more units. But it might be
Ms. Santini, can I add one thing? I think it's important. You're at a disadvantage. You haven't seen our architect's presentation. You haven't seen the elevation of the building and how it sits and what it looks like. And that our intention is to have our project architect available at the next hearing with the traffic engineer and hopefully bang those 2 out. And I think you'll be in a much better position to kind of see how it fits. And hopefully, we have to rent the property. We have sort of an aggressive underwriting going on with it. And it has to look right. It has to fit in. And we feel good about it. We like it and we're proud of it. And we hope you will be too when you see it. But I think your reaction's reasonable considering you haven't seen the elevation.
Thanks.
Any other questions by any other board members? Okay, then Mr. O'Neill, I'll open up the public hearing. I'm not going to close it, but if there are any members of the audience that wish to participate, here's your opportunity. I would just ask that you limit it to a few minutes, and then I'll let everybody who wishes to speak. So why don't we kick in our first participant, Mr. O'Neill.
We do not have one right now, but if we wait a minute, we'll see.
Yeah, I'll wait a minute. Anybody yet?
No. We have one.
Okay. Bring them on in. I would just ask that whoever the individual is, they identify themselves by their name and address, and that's it.
Good evening, members of the board. This is Jeff Hull, the town manager. I've been listening to the presentation this evening. I just wanted to at least offer some initial comments from my perspective, and can't certainly speak for individual members of the board, but I think it is worth just reviewing a bit of the history associated with affordable housing. I think many of the members will recall that there have been a number of discussions by the board over the last several years with concern about the affordable housing in Wilmington. We've seen, obviously, with the favorable economy, a number of housing developments throughout town, adding to the gross housing stock of market rate homes. When you increase the denominator, so to speak, or the gross number of homes, that's going to have a negative impact on the percentage of affordable units. We've also seen, in some cases, affordable units that were had a limited lifespan, if you will, and so once after 20 years or a specific period, those affordable units have fallen off the SHI and so are no longer included. And so as a consequence, as was mentioned earlier, we are just shy of 10% at the moment. Clearly, one of the concerns that I think we all have, myself and members of the board, is being vulnerable to hostile 40Bs that could be detrimental to a particular neighborhood. So as was mentioned earlier, we were presented with a proposal by another developer for in excess of 300 units on this site, which clearly was not acceptable to anyone, and that didn't go anywhere. I think, quite frankly, we're fortunate in this case to have an opportunity to be dealing with Princeton Properties. When they first came before us, we had some initial discussions with members of the staff and the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Greg Bendel. At the time, they were looking at a proposal for 120 units. When it was brought before the Board of Selectmen, there were some concerns expressed about that number. They agreed to reduce the number to 108 units, which I think demonstrates, in my estimation, a willingness on their part to work with the town. And I think they have been throughout the process in my dealings with certainly Mr. Chabin, very responsive, putting together this development agreement. As was noted earlier, it's not intended to supersede the Board of Appeals, but essentially to establish the understandings, one of the principal understandings being that the cost for the peer review would be assumed by the developers here, and they were very willing to do that. So I think, I guess generally speaking, I just want to make the point that affordable housing has been a discussion point for several years now. We're at a point where we need to make some decisive, take some decisive action. I think this proposal presents an opportunity to work with a firm that is reputable and develop a project that I think will be good for the town. Certainly, one of the things that has been talked about over the years is creating a space in that neighborhood for housing to complement places like Eli's and some of the neighboring businesses, the walkability, so to speak, for people to be able to also get on the train, which, as you know, we've been dealing with the MBTA to make some upgrades there. So I think from an overall perspective, this presents a good opportunity. The culvert was mentioned earlier. That is an issue. While Certainly, I think there's an advantage to the town here. While it's not the principal reason why this project should be supported, that culvert is going to have to be replaced, whether it's through this project or otherwise. And in my estimation, if we can have that replaced as part of this project and potentially be covered by a MassWorks grant, as opposed to the town having to spend $1 million, is advantageous. So I know that there are a lot of issues still before us, and the Board of Appeals will be called upon to look at the particulars, and certainly you should. But I think from my perspective and most of the board members, this is a project that is worth pursuing and will keep us over the 10% at least through 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hull. Mr. O'Neill, is there anyone else that wishes to comment that is piped in or is in queue?
We do not have anyone.
Okay, then I'm going to suspend the public hearing. I'm not going to close it. I'm going to suspend it. I'm going to bring it back to the board to make a motion consistent with the applicant's request regarding the peer review process.
Well, actually, Chairman, can I ask a couple more questions? So I'm wondering why that spot? If you wanted originally 120 units, you could have gone probably up near Ballardvale. You could have gone other places. Why that location?
Great question. The
Please don't
proximity,
because of the train.
the proximity to the train and the proximity to 93. And, I think it's really boils down to being somewhat that simple. I mean, real estate is all about location, location, location. I know that you know that as well as anyone on this call. The ability to get on and off 93, as my partner Dan Endyke had said to you when we had done what is now Avalon Oaks West and proposed that one, and when we managed Regency Place, we understand the value, if you will, of certain locations within Wilmington. We think this is an A+ location for rental housing. It's ripe for redevelopment anyway. That area needs to be cleaned up, and between the train and 93, that's really why we picked the spot.
I mean, I can appreciate that, but there's gonna be so much traffic. I mean, just down the road, the other train station where the metro is, the line to get through the light is horrendous coming from Burlington over. I just will be amazed if this goes through, that the traffic and standstill of trying to get in and out of there.
I would direct you to the traffic memo that actually has been submitted to the members for you to read, because I think you'll be surprised at what it says. And I have no doubt that the zoning board will ask to have a traffic engineer peer review what it is that we have turned in. And I'm very confident that you will actually find the opposite there once the improvements are made to what it is that we're putting in. The alternative uses for that site, had we not done multifamily there, if other things that are allowed by right had been developed there, the traffic could be 2 or 3x what it is we'll actually be generating there. So I guess what I would ask of you is to look at the short traffic memo that's there, and then listen to your peer review consultant when it comes in, because I think that the results are not going to be what you think they'll be with respect to traffic.
Okay. And I have another question for maybe Chairman, it's for Mr. Hull. So.
I don't know if he's still, Mr. O'Neill, is he still on the line?
Well, maybe
He's still available.
Okay, why don't you see if you can bring him up?
My question would be, if the culvert's that bad, and whether, so if this development doesn't go through, then why couldn't the town go and get their own MassWorks grants for to fix the culvert the same way as that this developer would do it? And
That is something that we would certainly look at. I don't believe, though, in terms of the competitive nature of these grants, that we would likely prevail, because, as was mentioned earlier, the goal in issuing MassWorks grants is to promote these kinds of developments. So, bar in the absence of this type of a housing development, I suspect there are any number of communities out there at any given time that are pursuing MassWorks grants and that have this kind of development activity behind it. For us to simply pursue a MassWorks grant for the purpose of exclusively replacing a culvert, I suspect we would not prevail.
Okay, so it's a hand in hand. It's twofold here because of the affordability of getting those parts to it. You're likely, but it's not guaranteed that we are going to get it.
My sense is, and certainly I would defer to Andrew because he's dealt with these in other cases, but my understanding is that the state, certainly they're promoting affordable housing and they're promoting neighborhood mixed-use developments. And so to the extent that they can do that, one of the ways that one of the levers they use is to provide financial assistance to move those kind of projects along. So in this case, the prospect of 108 units of affordable housing is something that is in their wheelhouse, they're looking for. So it's likely, I think we stand a very good chance of being very competitive and prevailing with this MassWorks grant if we simply pursued a standalone request to replace this culvert, without any of that other element. I suspect it's going to be much more challenging because, again, they're promoting affordable housing, and if they can use their financial wherewithal, then they're going to do that.
Okay, understood. One other question. You said one building was having underground parking, and then the other building doesn't have underground parking.
Correct.
Why?
Great. You're asking the most important questions because it's getting everything out on the table, which is great. The original design, Ms. Santini, showed no parking under either building. There was surface parking for both buildings with these garages that you saw that we're doing for some of the folks that want covered parking, if you will, for building B. When we put this together, we have two items that we have to balance. We have to balance the site itself with respect to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and we have to balance the needs of the Conservation Commission and Lubbers Brook. There are folks who are very well intentioned and who have been following this particular resource area in Lubbers Brook for a long period of time, and they are folks that are passionate about what they do. We have tried to include them early on in the process to make sure that they knew what we were doing. They've taken the time to help walk the site with Joe Pesnola, our engineer, and his consultants. The original area, you'll notice that there looks like there's some area behind building A that is undeveloped. In essence, that could be, in some interpretation, could be considered resource area or important area with respect to Lubbers Brook. So what we did as we went through the process and worked with town staff and with constituents out there, we took that area, we left that open to not be developed and not be to put impervious surface on. Instead, we tucked the parking underneath the building, which is much more expensive for us. It is certainly not, was not our first choice. It was our second choice, but it's the right choice. It's the right choice for the balance between conservation and a planning perspective. We believe that there is a need for some underground parking. There are people that are going to pay upwards of $250 a parking space to be able to not park their car out in the elements. So, and there's only 46 of those. So we're comfortable that we can make it work that way, and we can balance what's necessary for items within conservation as well as the zoning board. So we didn't have to increase the height to do it to a great extent. We've been able to stay within the development agreement amount. the parking underneath building A will be sunk down a bit to the extent that the groundwater allows that. So we're able to stay within the development agreement parameters with respect to the number of feet of height while balancing what's necessary for the Conservation Commission. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, it was good because I do recall going to one of the meetings and I thought there was going to be a change where they were going to try to keep the height down and not have garage space underneath, but if there's a compromise, one has it, one doesn't, and yeah.
That's the way we're able to balance the site.
Now, so where is the commercial? Is the commercial stores, are you still having that? Is that on the first floor?
No, there is no commercial with our proposal at all. It's just 108 apartment homes. There's no commercial. There is a vacant lot that is owned by Christian Jensen and the Eli family that is between, if you will, if you look at the site plan, parallel to the tracks that ultimately will be developed in the future for commercial uses. Christian has told the town that he will not try to do residential on that site. Ultimately, he'll look to do something that is commercial in nature on that long rectangular strip that parallels the track.
Okay, because that's why I was trying to figure out where the conversation was going with the extra commercial or the businesses, but you're not doing.
No commercial made its way into the proposal. The office building will remain. The long strip parallel to the track will ultimately develop, and what Princeton is doing is strictly 108 apartment homes, no commercial.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, then I guess I'll request that a motion be made with regard to the peer review experts. Now, Jonathan, I'm going to have to ask you for a little help in this with regard to the types of peer review we need. Obviously, we need a traffic. What else is standard that we would be requesting that the staff participate in choosing?
What you might want to do, Mr. Chair, is just refer to the memo from DPW, because they made recommendations about 4 distinct areas of peer review. They made recommendations of consultants to retain as well, but I understand.
Is that in the Dropbox that was provided to us?
No, it wouldn't be from us. This was issued by the town just before the meeting.
I don't believe I have that.
Oh.
I was never provided with that. The only thing that I was provided is the Dropbox information with obviously all the applicant submissions, the traffic, the architect.
Yeah, it was just issued middle of this afternoon, so probably the assumption was the board for next meeting, but I can tell you that the 4 areas that were referenced were, as I had suggested, both traffic and civil site design. They also put in water for domestic and fire hydraulic analysis, and sewer design and capacity analysis.
Is there a date on that memorandum?
It's today's date.
And it's issued by whom?
By DPW.
Okay, so if someone were to frame a motion, they would be requesting that the peer review experts as outlined in the DPW's memorandum of May 13th be decided upon by the town and its staff. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be a perfectly framed motion.
Does anyone care to make that motion?
So I'll make a motion as moved or as you stated.
You know what? I'll take the initiative. The chair ordinarily doesn't make a motion, but since it's already been articulated, I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, do we have a second? And again, it's going to be done by roll call. So I will go Ms. Santini,
Yes.
Mr. Lepore,
Yes.
Mr. Barletta,
Yes.
Mr. Siracusa,
Yes.
and then myself is yes as well. So we'll get the peer review process in motion. And then other than that, gentlemen, I think We just have to set up a schedule for the next meeting to go to the next step. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I'm hoping that either Ms. Malatesta or Ms. Gingrich are on and have the dates for you for the next meeting or two, so that we can have you move to a time certain.
Our next meeting is the 10th. We've already gone through that. I haven't gone beyond that. All these days are running together. So Kelly, I'll have to impose upon you to maybe give us the next 2 scheduled dates for meetings. And if those are acceptable, we'll take them. If there's something that has to be done on an interim basis, then I would ask the applicant to let us know.
Well, I believe they needed 2 in June, and I believe that Valerie Gingrich has that schedule. I didn't get that schedule.
Ms. Gingrich, are you with us? I see you.
I am here.
Okay, what do you suggest?
So the schedule that they provided, requested, was to have a second meeting in May 27th, which would, I believe, could be just for this application. You wouldn't have to put other items on that agenda. You could stick to just having this application for the May 27th, if that works.
So we would have May 27th, just with this sole thing on the docket, and then have our regularly scheduled meeting on June 10th. Is that correct?
Yes, Kelly, is the June 10th the regularly scheduled meeting?
It is, yes.
Okay. I mean, I don't have any conflicts with that. Do any of the other members of the board have any conflicts with that schedule?
No.
Okay. So then, why don't, Jonathan, does this need to be put in the form of a motion, or can we just schedule these?
It's common to put it in a motion, but it also doesn't require.
All right, you know what? I'm on a roll, so I'm gonna make a motion that we continue this matter, have a special meeting on Wednesday, May 27th at 7 p.m., whereupon only this matter will be scheduled on the agenda. And then it will also be taken up at our regularly scheduled meeting on June 10th, 2020 at 7 p.m.
I'll second it.
We have a second on that. So Ms. Santini,
Yes.
Mr. Lepore,
Yes.
Mr. Barletta,
Yes.
Mr. Siracusa,
Yes.
and then myself. So that's going to be the schedule moving forward. Gentlemen, is there anything else we need to deal with tonight on this?
No, Mr. Chairman, I very much appreciate the time. It's the first meeting is always difficult to sort out what needs to be done. I think we're in motion. I think all the members can expect that the town departments should be getting you information, their preliminary findings prior to our next hearing on May 27th, as Mr. Siracusa had pointed out. And between that and the peer review getting going on Mr. Pesnola's civil drawings, I think we'll have a lot to chew on at the next meeting. As Dan Endyke mentioned, it's our intention to bring our architect to the next meeting so you can hear from him, as well as our traffic engineer so that you can hear from him.
Okay, and Ms. Malatesta, I would impose upon you if I could, ma'am. I see you sent the Dropbox. I prefer having something that I can see, paper. I don't want you to kill any unnecessary trees, but is there a way that you can get me paper versions of everything that we're going to be reviewing in advance of the next meeting?
I can. I don't know that I'll get them in time to mail them, which is what happened in this case, which I usually do.
Right.
Which is why I did the Dropbox. But I mean, I could hand deliver them. We all live in the same town.
I mean, I could pick them up. We'll go offline and make arrangements to get that done. I just have a hard time dealing with things on a computer. I'd rather be looking at it.
Chair?
Sure.
So you can just let me know when those are ready and we can make arrangements to get those.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Maybe just a suggestion. I don't want to impose on Mr. Chabin and his team, but if they're able to print off reduced copies, if that's acceptable to the board, and just have them FedExed or mailed to the board members, if Ms. Malatesta could provide the addresses, maybe that would save her that burden.
We'd be happy to print them, Jonathan. We'd be happy to deliver them to the 5 homes. Given what's going on with the pandemic, everything's a little odd these days. We do have someone who can, on our staff who can do that. So if we're given 5 addresses, we can drop off 5 packages.
Fantastic. And Ms. Malatesta, you have all of our home addresses, right?
I do.
Then you can get them through Ms. Malatesta. She can give those to you.
We will take care of it, Mr. Chairman.
That's appreciated. Okay, seeing nothing else, is there anything administrative, Ms. Malatesta, that we need to deal with before I entertain a motion to adjourn?
No, not at this time.
Okay, so then I will entertain
Excuse me.
anyone.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Just kind of, so if the governor actually releases us from staying home, should we just assume that the next 2 meetings are going to be on the Zoom?
I would assume that we go one meeting at a time.
Okay,
Everything is in flux, so unless you hear different, in which case, obviously, everybody will know, then I would assume this is the mode of meeting until further notice.
okay.
That's what I would assume. Is that safe to say, Jonathan? You're probably the only resource that I would think may have an opinion on this that has some grounding in fact.
I think that's safe to say, and though nothing is in place yet, I wouldn't be surprised to see some guidance from the state level that allows for this to be the continued means of operation for land use boards even after the state of emergency is lifted.
Wonderful. So I can wear my pajamas to the meeting. Okay. All right. Having that, any other questions before we entertain a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a second on that.
Second.
We have a second. Ms. Malatesta, Ms. Santini,
Yes.
Mr. Lepore,
Yes.
Mr. Barletta,
Yes.
Mr. Siracusa,
Yes.
and I affirm that motion as well. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.